Imagine how much more you'd be able to sell if you could literally read people's minds. I mean, just imagine how cool that would be to be able to influence somebody just by reading their mind, by looking at their body and reading the language that their body is telling you, not just the language that their words or their tonality is telling you. And today we're going to be talking about these mind reading secrets with the expert in the field, Dr. Carl Christman. And we're going to be talking about how these mind reading and body language secrets apply to your business, your career, when it comes to you selling your products and services, but as well as how you can practically use them in every area of your life, including your personal life, so that you can live an extraordinary life. Welcome to the Be Better broadcast. You know, the only fee for this show. We don't show sponsors. We don't show ads because we want you to enjoy the entire experience without interrupting that experience. And the only reason we've been able to grow in the time that we have been able to grow is because you're a part of the team. Share this show with one person. Once you take away any piece of value, a technique that you didn't use before or have before, a new way of thinking, or maybe we simply just made you smile, share the show with one friend or several friends if you want to, because you are the reason we are growing at the rate that we are. So without further ado, let's talk about these mind reading and body language secrets with the doctor, Mr. Dr. Carl Christman. And for those who don't know, Dr. Carl, with over 15 years as a professor of communication and his experience as a mentalist, Dr. Christman's presentations are educational, interactive, and entertaining. Would you like to avoid lost sales because your team doesn't know what customers are really thinking? If your life would be easier if you knew what your colleagues, competition, and customers were thinking, then this conversation is for you. Dr. Christman, it's a pleasure to have you here, my friend.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
So let me tell you, I come from the world of sales, okay? And I've been in the world of sales for over 10 years now. And the number one thing that I notice, especially new salespeople struggle with, is reading somebody's personality, right? Someone comes in and they might be a slow talker. They might be a slow walker. Everything about their demeanor is slow. And they just attack them. They're talking fast. They're talking like a city slicker. And the person's like, whoa, I just feel totally like violated right now. This is so important what we're talking about here today. And I'm excited to dive into the nuances, but I'm curious, how did you find yourself in this world of mind reading and becoming a body language expert? Like, how did this all begin for you?
Oh, wow. So I, I wish I could say that I always planned on this, but I just kind of fell into it. I finished high school, didn't want to get a job, so I went to college. Finished college, didn't want to get a job, so I stayed in graduate school and I never left. So 20 years later, I'm still in college. And I just gravitated more toward communication and playing with people's minds because I just found it interesting. So I went toward communication, got my degrees in that, was teaching that, and I found that there's so much more you can do with that. So by looking at nonverbal communication, how to read people and the psychology behind it, I found it was so interesting to be able to just kind of get that deeper connection with people, which applies to all sorts of things, including how do you read people? How do you make that sale? How do you really build that deeper connection? And so, in academia, everyone gets their own little niche, and I'm glad this is mine because I think it's way more fascinating.
Yeah. So you've been in this world of communication for a while. What specifically is it about the nonverbal communication that allows us to truly connect with people at a deeper level? What fascinated you about the nonverbal aspect of things?
Well, there's that mind reading aspect, and the title of my book, "How to Read Minds and Influence People," it's obviously dramatic, reading people's minds. But basically, that's what it is because I love it so much because you can really get inside people's minds more so than just talking to them. It's not just what people say, it's how they say it. It's everything about their micro expressions, their facial expressions, their body language. You can really get a deeper understanding of what people actually think. And I found that when you practice this idea of empathetic accuracy, you can really figure it out. What really sparked my curiosity was this idea of empathetic accuracy. So empathy is I feel your pain, not just I feel sorry for what you're going through, but I really feel what you're experiencing. And we all have this experience, this ability. Now, the empathetic accuracy is how well you do that. So if I can look at someone, I can say, this is what they're going through right now. This is the question they have. This is what they're feeling. That's pretty much as close to mind reading as most people are ever going to get. And so what I focused on, what I've been studying and researching and trying to teach people to do is how can you hone these abilities? How can you really read people more effectively? Because if you can get inside their minds, every part of your life will be better. And you can help every part of their life be better by having that deeper connection.
No, absolutely. You know, when you see the average person just out in the public having conversations, even, you're out at dinner and you look at the table next to you and the husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it might be, they're having a conversation on a scale of 1 to 10. How well would you say people are conscious of and are using the principles that you talk about when it comes to reading body language and communicating intentionally with their body? Like, how in tune are normal people to this world of nonverbal communication?
Well, I think we're all in tune to some degree, mostly when something doesn't fit. Now, if I just see a couple having dinner, I'm probably not paying attention to them. But if all of a sudden one of them gets super pissed, oh, that's different. I'm going to notice that. But if we focus, if we really take the time to pay attention, we can all do this. The biggest thing that influences how well we do this is how much we actually care. There was a study done where they looked at this empathetic accuracy and they measured it, where basically they said, here's a picture of this person. They think something, they feel something. What is it they feel? They tried this on men and women, and they found that women were way better at this than men were.
No
Then,
surprise.
yeah, then they did it again, and they said, "We're gonna make this a game. You can win points, you can win prizes." And they did it again. When they did it that way, they found that men and women were pretty much identical in their ability to read other people, which showed it wasn't actually the ability, it was the desire. How much do you actually care? You actually have to be focusing. So as long as you focus, as long as you truly care what other people think, it works because so much of the time people will say, "How are you doing?" No one really cares. In
Yeah.
fact, you want to have an awkward conversation. When someone asks you, "How's it going?" Tell them. I, that just meant hello. Why are you answering me?
Yeah.
So you actually have to ask questions, observe people, focus, and then care about the answers and actually have a meaningful conversation. Then we can do amazing things.
So this is something where if you want to get better at this skill of reading people and hearing what they're telling you without them telling you, this is something that you have to really intentionally dial in on and do, correct?
Absolutely. And so in my training sessions and my keynotes, I actually have flashcards and we actually go through and here's a picture of someone. What do you think they're feeling? And you go through and you experiment, you test, you see if you can pick up on certain signals. And there's an answer because when this was done, we actually knew what people were thinking so we can test ourselves. Now, in everyday life, the way to do this is to use these readings as a conversation starter. It's nothing mystical where you say, here's exactly what you're thinking, and then walk away. No, you use it as a conversation starter. So in my classes periodically, I'll notice something with a student, like, I think they're having a bad day. There's something going on. They've got some sort of problem. And then I use that as an opportunity to start a conversation and see if there's anything I can do to help. Now, sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I say, oh, no, it's, I don't have any problems. I'm just under the weather, or I just didn't sleep well last night. It could be something completely different. I know there's something different. I know there's a problem. I don't know if it's a serious problem I can help with or just having a bad day. But the only way to do that is to figure out by talking to them. I've done some consulting for some medical groups, and one thing we found for doctors is the best thing they can do to improve their patient relationships is to just spend time talking with people, have a conversation, and get to know them. So you get kind of that baseline. How are they feeling? What's going on normally? And then when I ask them questions, what kind of problems do they exhibit non-verbally? And then use that as a way to start some follow-up questions and see, are they just nervous because they don't like being at the doctor's office? Or is there some issue that I can help with? So it's all trial and error and just building those relationships.
It's so interesting how you develop that baseline so you can see how people normally are when they're answering questions. Just like with a lie detector test, you ask people what their
Absolutely.
name is, where they're born, where they live, and then you start asking the difficult questions and you start notice some shifting in the chair, you notice sweaty
Right.
hands, you notice people moving and fidgeting in weird ways. I want to ask you about what you said about starting a conversation with this. And we can talk about this in the frame of a salesperson or even someone who's just out there looking to meet new people and network. Will you start conversations with talking about how it appears someone feels even when you're talking to strangers? And how do you start that conversation with people out in the wild?
Well, I don't usually start with, I see something odd on your face. I mean, it'd be kind of awkward. But just once uh, once you're picking up on something, you can start the conversation and move that general direction. Uh, and it's just like anything; it should be a natural conversation. How you feeling? What's going on? And then you can kind of tell: are they telling the truth? Are they lying? Because just how are you doing? If they are they going to tell the truth or lie? And what I'm looking for oftentimes is micro expressions, which the
Mm,
micro expressions are that instantaneous moment of truth. The problem that most of us have is that most of us are honest people by nature. We are not pathological liars, and we want to tell the truth. But also, most of us want to be polite, and we've got that kind of tension. So, if I were to invite you to my house for dinner, you would probably hate every minute of it because I'm a terrible cook and I'm vegetarian. So, most people don't like my food. But if I were to say, "How's dinner?" you would say, "Oh, it's good." I'm looking for that instantaneous moment of honesty. It's like, "Oh god, that was the worst thing I've ever tasted," before you realize, "Well, I don't wanna be rude. He put a lot of time into cooking," and then you're gonna lie. Now that was exaggerated, but I'm looking for that very quick moment. So, in a sales meeting of some sort, people may not want what you have to sell, or they might be resistant, or there might be objections. But they also realize that this is your job. They don't want to be rude. So they're going to try to hide those objections or those issues. So you're looking for those instantaneous differences. And it's not that I'm going to say, I see this in your face. It's that I'm going to start a conversation and then I'm going to be trying to see, are they going along with it? Is what they're saying matching what their face is saying? And
mm.
as far as approaching people, I don't usually approach random strangers. I always have a reason to talk to someone. Now, it's all about creating that rapport, and I can find a reason to talk to almost anyone because we all have certain things in common. Uh, it can be work, it can be social issues, it can be family, friends, uh, based on where you are. Oh, you're in upstate New York. I was there for an event right before the pandemic. So we have something we can talk about. I didn't live there, but hey, I had some experiences in your area. You can always find some way of creating that relationship if there's a reason to.
Yeah, that's how we started our conversation today, right? Rather than
Absolutely.
just jump right into things, actually, have a
Yeah.
human element brought to things, right? Now, when you're helping people to become better at this, what are some of the things that you show people to look for? You mentioned micro expressions, but they're guaranteed people listening right now who are like, well, what exactly is that? Like, what specifically are the easiest telltale signs of if someone is incongruent with what they're saying? Like, what do you train people to look for?
So to get technical, there are many different micro expressions. You can look at there's hundreds of combinations. But the easiest way of doing this is to just look at mirroring and your intuition and asking yourself, if I were that person right now, how would I be feeling? If you get technical and try to figure out what does it mean when the eyebrows are like this and the cheeks are like this, and I've seen people that try to do that where they do lie detection. They say, well, there's these 17 things we're looking for. There's a shortcut. What we're looking for is just intuition and mirroring. And you can kind of ask yourself, if I were if I were looking like that person were right now, how would I feel? Now maybe the way they're sitting, if I they're sitting like this, I think I'll sit like this and see, okay, how do I feel right now? Uh, and just asking yourself, what's going on if my face looked like that right now? What is it I would be thinking? And like you mentioned with lie detections, uh, for lie detector tests, you always need that baseline. They need to know, how do you normally respond? So they're going to ask you things they already know. What is your name? What's the date today? Where are you from? They're going to ask a series of questions and get that baseline. Here's how you normally are. Then they start asking the questions they actually want answers to, and they can look at the readouts to figure out, is this person telling the truth or are they lying? The same thing goes with trying to read people in real life. I need to spend some time talking with someone so I figure out what's going on. For the doctors I mentioned, they need to spend 5 minutes just having a conversation. How does this person respond when we're talking about the weather or sports or traffic? Then they can figure out, how are they different when I start asking them questions about their health? Because maybe they're just naturally grumpy. Maybe this is just the way their face looks. Like, I don't know if you're mad right now or if that's just your face. You always you always need that baseline. So the shortcut, as opposed to looking at all the different things, and I go in detail in the book and in my speeches and trainings into lots of little specific things. But the basic thing is just asking yourself, how would I feel if I were them? And how are they different now than they were a few minutes ago when we were talking about something completely different? So in sales, I want to just, hey, talk about the weather, hang out, talk about anything to see, are they normally kind of stubborn and not really into it? Or are they excited? Hey, if I'm talking about sports and they're really into it, then I get to talking about my product and they're more reserved. Then I know there's objections I need to be looking at. Sometimes these things are more subtle than others, but I'm always just looking at that baseline differences and how I would probably be feeling.
Wow. You said a lot there that I want to dive into a couple things. So mirroring and intuition. And I've heard of mirroring and I've practiced it because, again, I've been in sales
Okay.
for a while, but I know a lot of people, especially when I train people, they weren't familiar with the idea of mirroring. They found it strange to, the customer puts their leg over their other leg, they turn to the side, they put their leg over their leg and turn to the side. Like, what is the power in physically mirroring somebody? And there's an important aspect that you keep coming back to here, which is something that is alien and unnatural for a lot of us at first, which is awareness of the other person, having an acute awareness of what they're doing with their body, the way that they're saying certain things, not just the words that they're saying, right? And I mean, we all understand what that intuition is because we talk to somebody who gives us bad vibes. We talk to somebody and we're like, "Ooh, I don't know what it is about that person, but I'm just kind of feeling a little unsafe," right? That's that intuition. So we get that. But when it comes to mirroring, what is the power in mirroring somebody, especially in a situation where you're looking to gain influence?
Well, so mirroring is going to it's going to do two things. It helps build that connection because there's something similar to that person right now. But also, what I care more about is it helps me get inside their mind and figure out what they're thinking. So it's basically copying uh, their actions almost. But you obviously don't go too far. If they cross their leg, you cross your leg. They turn to the right, you turn to the right. If it becomes obvious, then it's kind of creepy. Then you're just shadowing them. That's kind of weird. But it's more so the vibe. If they're leaning forward and they're excited, then you should be excited too. You're kind of copying the, it's not even just one specific action, it's the whole vibe. If they're more laid back, you don't want to come in their face like you're excited. It's just weird. I find morning people very annoying when I first wake up when I have no energy. Like, okay, give me a second, let me wake up, and then we can talk. So it's more the energy level. It helps them feel more comfortable because they feel like you're matching their excitement, their energy, their mood, their emotion. You're with them. And that means that you guys have something in common. There's that rapport that you're almost building more of just, are we tired now? Are we living life to the fullest? Are we worried? You're going to match their emotion. You're feeling what they're feeling. But also, that lets you get inside their minds. If they're excited, so I naturally am just excited, then I can get in that kind of same zone to where I'm understanding what they're thinking. So it serves all sorts of purposes.
Once you get in that zone with them where you understand what they're thinking, you're feeling the emotions they're experiencing,
Hmm.
how do you then lead them in the direction that you want to bring them? How do you then influence them and get them to buy something that's obviously good for them, that's unethical otherwise, but how do you move people in the direction you want them to go in once you've established that common ground using these principles?
Well, then you actually need to be making your arguments. There's only so much you can do non-verbally. You're building that rapport, you're understanding what they're thinking. If you want to sell people, you actually have to physically sell them on it and use your words. All this is just helping you to understand where to drive the conversation. So if I'm noticing there's some objections, I need to vocally overcome those objections. If I can see that we're moving too fast, then I can step back and slow the process down. But I actually have to be selling them on the idea with my words, with my standard sales pitch. All I'm doing here is I'm figuring out how to tailor it best so that it really doesn't overwhelm them, doesn't bother them, and we actually kind of go at their pace.
Mm. You're putting people at ease. You're making them
Absolutely.
feel safe. You are experiencing what they're experiencing, which, I mean, if you think of a lot of times you go into somewhere, when you think of a time where you had a great salesperson, the salesperson was doing these things without you consciously even realizing it.
Absolutely. And if they're a natural, they might not even be realizing what they're doing, but they put you at ease and they're just naturally kind of a people person. And you can just kind of feel that happening. Sometimes it takes work, sometimes it's natural, but you should feel comfortable when this whole process works.
So do you think these principles of nonverbal communication, do you believe that this is what separates a natural salesperson from someone where it doesn't come naturally to them?
Partially, I think we can all do this. Some people have to focus on it, some just do it naturally. So, absolutely, some people are better at this right off the bat than others. Some actually have to consciously focus on it.
Interesting. I'm curious. Was there a particular moment in your life that made you say to yourself, I want to look deeper into this world of nonverbal communication? Or was it just the field itself that you dove into, you went down the rabbit holes, or was it a specific situation for you?
Well, the nice thing about college is you have a broad array of classes and subjects and theories you study, and then you focus. So, I was in class just taking all these many classes. Oh, communication looks interesting. And I was in a communication class. Oh, nonverbal communication looks interesting, and persuasion looks interesting. And so I just kind of naturally gravitated towards the ones that just seemed like the most fun to me.
Gotcha. I think it's such a powerful field to be into and to be good at specifically. When you work with people, how soon with practice and putting these things into use, how soon can people even double their effectiveness in this field and start to see immediate results in building rapport with people?
Well, hopefully immediately. I mean, I go over actionable things for how do you actually read people better. Like I said, the flashcards where you can actually start practicing this stuff. So hopefully there's an immediate improvement once you understand these things. And a lot of what I've already talked about this morning is common sense. I mean, just talking about it, all I'm doing is I'm reminding people like, oh yeah, that's true. And then hopefully when you focus on that a little bit more, you're better. And then obviously the more time you put into practicing, the more you go over the concepts, the better you get. But it should be instantaneous, hopefully.
If this is common sense, though, then why is it that this is so alien to a lot of people, especially people who are in sales? What do you think it is that takes away this common sense itself, where they believe that this is something that they have to learn as if it was brand new? Like why is it missing in much of our culture today?
Well, I guess common sense doesn't mean people know it or do it. It just means that it makes perfect sense. So uh, there's just certain things we forget because, boy, especially if your life depends on sales, when you walk in there, you're thinking about the paycheck, you're thinking about making the mortgage, you're thinking about
Yes.
overcoming objections, you're thinking about the script that you learned for whatever organization you're working for, and part of it's just set all that apart. Look at the person in front of you, focus on their needs and the relationship and what you're trying to accomplish. So it definitely takes some work.
Absolutely. And it's just so important. I mean, those who struggle with this are generally in their head, right? They're thinking
Yeah.
about everything that you just said. They're thinking about me, me, me. They're thinking about them. They're thinking about what to say next, what part of the sales process they're in.
Hmm.
Once you take that focus off of you and place it on the other person, I think a big thing with this too is a lot of people, including myself, like I'm not perfect in this in any way. I'm conscious of it a lot of the time, but when people are talking, I'm thinking about the next thing that I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And while I'm holding that thought in my mind, I'm completely oblivious to the way that you're using your body because I'm just thinking about me and what I'm going to do next. And because of that, I'm missing out on 80% or more of the conversation that I'm having with this other person.
Absolutely. And it goes back to that truly being interested in the other person and what they're saying. Because you can tell when people are doing that, where they ask a question, they don't really care. They're just waiting for, well, you said this, that's one objection, move to part A in the script. You said this, that's B, move to this part of the script. There's not really a relationship. So all this goes back to building that relationship and really caring about what other people say and think.
The first thing you said, you got to care. You've got to really want
Absolutely.
to build that relationship with the person, even if it's a short-term relationship. Like, okay, but when you're talking with people out in the wild, right? When you're not in a sales
Hmm.
situation, what are some other practical ways in which you use these principles where you're consciously using them? Or do you simply use them everywhere and look to build rapport with everyone you come into contact with?
I'd say everywhere. Well, first of all, or at least I want to build a rapport with pretty much everyone. Otherwise, what's the point? There's two kinds of communication. There's just the routine, uh, getting coffee somewhere. I don't need to have a relationship with the barista. Uh, Here's what I want. Here's money. End of transaction. Seeing people on the street. How's it going? I don't really care. That's just walking by or just nodding the head. But for most people that I deal with, I actually want to have some sort of relationship. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
Uh, and so we look at this in communications as a level of intimacy, not romantic, but just that you care. Your life depends on them. Their life depends on you. So anyone you interact with, where what they say or do impacts you, what you do or say impacts them. That level of caring for family members, obviously, friends, coworkers, basically anyone you deal with for more than 5 or 10 minutes, there's that level of interdependence that you're dealing with. But I don't really separate it between selling and not selling because I think we're always selling. At all times, we're trying to sell something. Some people, they actually make their living selling a product or service. As a teacher, I sell. I sell my students on the importance of the subjects I teach. If I
Mm.
don't do that, then what's the point? If they finish my class and they don't really care because I didn't sell them on why it was important, then they just wasted their time. I figure good lawyers know the law. Great lawyers know how to sell judges and jury. Well, they know the judge, but they know how to sell uh, judges and juries on the verdict they're looking for or their clients on what they should do. Good doctors could diagnose a condition. But honestly, most of the time we know what the problem is. We need to eat healthier, we need to exercise more, we need to take our medicine or get vaccinated. We know that stuff. Great doctors, however, can influence us to take actions and do what's best for us. So, in most interactions, we're trying to influence other people because if people do what we think they should, if we're right, things will turn out better for them and for us. So, I think we're always trying to influence it. For your kids, you're trying to influence them to make the right choices. For your partner, you're trying to influence them to have a better life. We're always trying to influence other people. So, I don't really even differentiate. Hopefully, everything we do is trying to influence people.
Well said. You got me thinking now, though, when you say things like, the lawyers influencing the jury, you're
Mhm.
influencing your students. Even when you do events, you're influencing the crowd, you're reading the crowd. Are there any one or two things that, when it comes to influencing a group of people, since it's difficult to read the faces of every individual person, what are the indicators that you have congruence with a group of people? Like what do you do differently when it's one to many versus one on one?
Well, if it's one on one, it's easier to pivot. So I can change on a dime when I see one person agrees or doesn't agree, is going along with it, is resistant. The larger the group, the harder that is. So
Mm,
when I have an entire audience, when I've got hundreds of people or 1,000 people in front of me, I can adjust it based on one or two people. Now, if I get the large, kind of the average of the responses, if people applaud, oh, I guess this is working well. If they, if people just look awestruck, oh, I should probably explain that a little bit differently. So you're looking for things like that. Now, in a public speaking situation, it's way easier because we have formalized ways of doing this. So I approve, applause. Uh, I never get applause one on one. So it's a lot easier to read people the larger it is because it's exaggerated and you can more easily tell. And we do that because there's that distance. So obviously, you can't tell what I think if you're standing 50 feet away on stage with lights in your eyes. So we amplify those responses. So it's very easy to do that way. Now you won't get everyone. I can explain something in a keynote, and 90% of the people love it. There could be 10% of people like not really into it. Of course, I can't tell that because the other 90% are applauding, hopefully.
Mhm.
We miss some. We're looking for the averages, the larger the group, but it's so amplified, you really can't miss it. One on
It's a
one,
vibe.
yeah, it's the vibe. You can just feel it, which is honestly why I haven't enjoyed doing online trainings and speeches nearly as much because sometimes people's cameras are off, sometimes they're muted. I mean, obviously they should be because it's awkward otherwise, but you miss all that stuff. I love the energy of a live audience where you can just tell there's a good vibe. People are having a good time.
Yes.
Uh, yeah. Whereas one on one works virtually fine because I can see you right now. Now there's an audience listening to us, watching us right now. I don't know. I can't tell if they find this exciting or if they're bored out of their minds. So you miss that feedback. So one on one, it's just so much easier to pivot, but it's fun either way.
Well, I hope they're excited, those listening,
Yeah,
and
no,
I hope
absolutely.
and I mean, we already talked about a few things where really this just comes down to intention and it comes down to caring, like you said. And a lot of it does come down to that intuition. It comes down to that gut feeling of, is this person and I gelling? If so, why not? Am I matching them? Am I moving my body, my own antenna to their own signal so that we can mess with each other better? I mean,
Absolutely.
with all the research and the study and the facilitation that you've done in this field, what is your vision with this? Like, what are you hoping to achieve in this specific chapter of your life when it comes to the work that you're doing, especially with your book, which I'll talk about in a second with you, How to Read Minds and Influence People? What's your vision and mission here?
So I'm trying to share my studies with people outside of academia. So I've spent years in the classroom and I share it with people that are taking my class, that are majors in communication, that are moving that direction. And they're interested, they're excited, they enjoyed it. That's why they chose the major, that's why they chose my class. But I've been having a blast for the last 5 or 8 years now, taking it out to people in the business world, to people in medicine, to people in law enforcement, talking to different crowds, different audiences, and figuring out how we can take these principles and apply it to their professional lives. And I've just been having a blast because they're so receptive to it. Because it's not just, I want to finish this class, I want to finish this major, I want to graduate and move on with my life. It's, I can use this today to build better rapport with my patients, to have better interactions with uh, people that I deal with in law enforcement, or to improve my sales. How do I actually build my numbers by building rapport better and reading people more effectively? So I've just been having a blast taking this to really receptive audiences who actually see the value, not just abstractly, here's some theories, but oh, I can use this to improve my life and the lives of people I deal with on a daily basis right now.
It's so cool because by you doing that, you are in a sense connecting the world at a deeper level than they were before, which is, I mean, think about how powerful that is. I mean, in a sense, you got Mark Zuckerberg doing the same thing with Facebook. You're
Yep.
simply sharing a different tool, right? The tool is this thing that we do naturally. But when you go out into the business world, people who didn't take a communication major, they never learned these things or they never thought about them in a way that can be practiced and utilized and improved in. So you're really working to bring people together at a deeper level. And I commend you for that work, my friend.
Oh, thank you. I hope to.
So let's talk about your book. You wrote this book in 2016, you said, right? How to Read Minds and
Yes.
Influence
Yep.
People. So who did you write the book for? And tell us a little bit about what we can expect with your book.
All right. Well, first of all, obviously, I stole the title and changed it, which I just love because I'll meet people and they'll say, "Oh, I love your book. I read it in the '80s. It was amazing." And I have to say, wow, I need to take better care of my skin if you think I wrote this book in the '80s.
Right.
So slight difference there. But I wrote it because I wanted to focus my ideas before I went out, or as I was going out to speaking to people. I always have people ask for more information, so I put everything in there. So in a 30-minute keynote or in a 3-hour training session, I can't cover absolutely everything there is to know about this. So what the book does is it gets into the research, it goes in detail with everything I talk about, everything I focus on in my research for how to read people and how to influence them. And it's just the detailed, focused kind of masterclass. Here's everything there is to know about how to build those rapports, how to sell people on anything. So it's just an in-depth look at all of this. And my goal was to make this accessible to pretty much anyone and to give them tools. So in it, uh, there's actually techniques you can use. There's things you can practice. There's links to things on my website where you can actually go on the website on your smartphone or computer and actually practice a lot of these things. So it should be hands-on. Here's a principle. Here's examples to illustrate so you understand how it works. And then here's how you can actually practice it. And here's how you can apply that in daily life. And between that and the training sessions I do at companies, I hope to really just spread this message and help people improve their relationships with everyone around them, whether it's family, friends, coworkers, or potential customers.
It's a powerful message. And I mean, if it's going deeper into what we've already talked about today, it's going to be fascinating content, something that people can use, like you said, in literally every single area of their lives. So everyone listening, How to Read Minds and Influence People, Dr. Carl Christman, right in the description. Go click the link and go check out his book. And it was a pleasure having you on the show, my friend. And
Well, thank you.
I appreciate you coming on and sharing these techniques that are going to improve our life, both personally and professionally. So thank you very much, Dr. Carl.
Perfect. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Fascinating conversation, especially if you're in sales or in a position to influence anybody, which is literally every human being alive. My top takeaways were there's two ways when it comes to really becoming more in tune with somebody, which is mirroring, right? Mirroring not to just influence, but mirroring to feel what the other person is feeling and to develop a deeper rapport and connection with them, but also really tuning into your own intuition. Sometimes we feel that gut feeling, sometimes we feel that vibe, but we go against it. And we believe that intellectually we're wiser than our own animal brain, which has kept us alive for millions and millions of years. Right. So being more in tune with that, truly caring about other people, whether it's a client, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your friend, anyone, will help you develop a more meaningful relationship. And in a sense, like Dr. Carl Christman said with his mission, it will help you to connect the world on a deeper level. And that's what Dr. Carl is doing. Link is in the description to go check out his book, How to Read Minds and Influence People. You know, the only fee for the show is to share this show with one person if you found any value or if we made you smile or gave you a piece of insight. Thank you, as always, for tuning in and watching the show. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.